If you grew up during the late 1980s or early 1990s, chances are you're going to have pretty fond memories of that arcade era and most everything that consisted of. One of those more tactile experiences were the coin-operated arcade basketball games with their nets on the sides and feeding you mini-sized basketballs to try to beat your high score, often earning you a bunch of tickets in the process. Now the latter is the concept the developers at Realcast are looking to recreate, this time in VR, but still giving you that authentic feeling 1980s arcade experience where you just can't get enough of playing the game and trying to outdo yourself, your friends, or your high score. Now, as a unique twist to this format, however, Realcast has taken the next logical step and designed this game, if you want, to play without controllers and just use your bare hands, making it easier than ever to just put on some goggles and shoot some hoops. Let's see how this experience stacks up on the Oculus Quest 2 and on Steam VR. So first off, a quick disclaimer here. I am absolutely terrible at basketball in real life, which probably makes me a horrible candidate to review a basketball game, but that being said, I had some interesting experiences with this title, and I'm eager to share my findings with you. Like any virtual reality game, there's really no way I'm going to be able to convey the true experience of putting on VR goggles, being immersed in that world, and then using the controls, especially just showing you flat screen video footage. Most people probably wouldn't consider the graphics cutting edge in this game, but I can say that there was never a single moment where the graphics took me out of the experience, and especially when you're holding things up like basketballs when you pick them up, the texture and the look of them looks really, really spot on, and the physics really shines through in the entire experience. The ball hitting the rim, bouncing, the look of a swish, all hit the mark pretty perfectly. And the rim in particular, just the interaction when the basketball hits it at different angles and bounces off, it really feels spot on. There is more to be said about your own interactions with the basketball, but that's something we'll get into in just a little bit. I spent probably 95% of my time in the Oculus Quest 2 variation of this game, but I did load it up on my PC and Steam VR to see if there's any overall noticeable differences in graphics quality or performance. And I can't decide if this is a positive or negative, but they pretty much look virtually identical. You're not going to be losing much playing on the Quest 2, which is great, but on the flip side, I would have hoped for maybe some advanced graphical options or settings on the PC VR experience. One thing I do recall of the arcade experience for games such as this is the dim lighting and the interactive light. Oftentimes when you'd make a score or get on a streak, you'd be rewarded with some type of light show or different types of lighting, and that unfortunately is absent here. This may be a limitation of the Oculus Quest hardware, but it would be something fun to see, and I would love to see developers integrate this if the hardware can permit, especially at least on the PC VR side of things. On the rewards end, aside from a high score, it might be fun to tap into that ticket phenomenon that you had where you made a bunch of baskets, you get those tickets, and then you can purchase some type of prize for your efforts. This is definitely not essential, but is another opportunity to give another throwback to the old arcade and amusement park heydays. The gameplay itself has some very good things going for it, but also does have some shortcomings. It's worth noting that Realcast has really given themselves quite a challenge here in trying to create a very tactile, weighted experience in recreating arcade basketball. Other VR games, such as VR Pinball, that lends itself pretty well to a VR environment. All you need is 2 triggers, 1 on each hand, and you can recreate that experience pretty easily since there's not much else that goes into that experience. The term airball definitely takes on a new meaning in this game. There's no ball physically there, whether you're trying to use the controllers or hand tracking. As opposed to really playing this type of game in real life, not being able to feel the basketball does affect the dynamic a little bit. The developers supposedly designed this game with no controller, hands-only tracking in mind, and somewhere along the development they also added the option to use controllers. They do give you the option to switch between these 2 modes at any time, which is really nice. Both offer different experiences, and in either case it's going to take a bit of trial and error to try and figure out how to best adjust your playstyle to each system, and I did find myself using the controller-based method more often than not, as even the really small amount of weight of the controllers helped offset the feeling of not physically picking up and shooting a basketball. That being said, if you're in a well-lit room and your hardware does support hand and finger tracking, it does work quite well. On the Oculus Quest 2, really there's hardly any lag in tracking even your individual fingers, but that's when your hands are right up in front of the display. when you're actually in the process of shooting the ball with high velocity, the results can sometimes be a little bit less than spectacular, but it does work quite well and is a fun option to have. There's definitely pluses and minuses to both approaches. Over the week or two period I casually reviewed this game, I can't say I ever truly figured out how to get good results, but instead of completely blaming the game and its mechanics, I have to acknowledge that I just might not be good at basketball. When you're using the VR controller-based scheme, you basically have these rubbery, floppy hands, and you just get them near the basketball to contact them. The problem is that no matter how you cut, there's going to be times where the fingers aren't going to contact the basketball in a good way, and just trying to pick up and shoot the shot as is always going to give you bad results. What you're typically going to want to do in those scenarios is just set down the basketball, re-grab it, and then proceed from there. The downside is that in a time-based experience like this, where the clock is ticking, this can be a little bit frustrating. In this regard, I really wouldn't mind an assist option in the settings that can be toggled on and off that would allow you to always have your grip, once picking up the basketball initially, locked into good form. It might take a little bit of the realism and physics away, but would definitely cut down a lot of the frustration that I was experiencing. Another similar issue is in regards to the support hand when you're actually shooting the basketball. Since there's no actual ball to physically stop your hands, you can technically continue to move your hands far closer together than you'd be able to in real life. And since both hands are contributing to the shot itself, where the support hand is placed is going to play quite a big role in how the shot releases from your hand. This is one of the biggest frustrations I had and was consistently tweaking and trying to figure out how to have the shot release come out the way I'm pretty sure it would be closer to being if I was really shooting the basketball in real life in an arcade. This could also potentially be an opportunity to have an assist or an adjustment setting in the menu to rebalance, but having more weight on the shot being placed on the shooting hand and not having the contribution as much of the secondary hand physics affect the shot as much. The great part is, the developers have already stated that they're actively tweaking the game and have plans to expand the core functionality and gameplay options. Since I started playing this game, this has persisted to be my most played VR title. It's extremely accessible, easy to pick up, and there's hardly any setup in order to get going. You definitely will move around a little bit while playing this game, but aside from a little hop here and there, you're mostly going to be stationary. I found that even when I was putting on my VR headset for a different type of gaming experience, I almost always started off shooting a few hoops and always had a wonderful time doing so. The frustration of the mechanics are certainly there, but I'm hopeful that the developers will address these things in upcoming releases. I was initially going to score the game a little lower due to my above-mentioned frustrations with mechanics, but I have seen on the leaderboards and scoreboards online that some people have amazingly high scores, and so I'm going to assume that some of this is just up to me not being very good at the game, and I still haven't figured it out, at least for the time being. I can see this game getting more and more enjoyable over time with the tweaks that developers will be integrating, and especially for its price, I wholeheartedly recommend it.